Welcome to Hometown Happenings. I'm Carol McCarthy here today at the Household Hazardous Waste site, and we are going to talk to a couple representatives from a couple agencies who deal with burning. We have some hazards of burning. We're standing here by a burn belt. We're also going to talk about how what you can do with spring coming on. There are people who need to burn for natural reasons and such, and how you can get your hands on a burning permit here in the area. We'll be talking to Howard Mooney from the DNR in a little bit. Right now I'm talking to Dan Olson from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, who deals with burning issues.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason I'm wearing this this mask today is that when I heard we were going to be talking about burn barrels, it's a good idea to have something like this because burn barrels put out a lot of toxic smoke, and that's why, just a second, I think.
It'd be probably easier to understand me without the mask. It is no longer legal to have burn barrels in Minnesota because of that reason, because burning household waste is very hazardous to that household as well as your neighbors.
All right. So right now we're standing, of course, obviously a burn barrel, and these are actually illegal in Minnesota.
That's correct. There's only a few exceptions, and they're hardly even worth mentioning. So for most people in most households, even rural households now, burn barrels are illegal for some of the reasons I mentioned. They actually put out, they don't burn hot enough to adequately remove the toxins and everything. Like an incinerator, an industrial incinerator, a municipal incinerator, they burn the garbage at very, very high temperatures, and it breaks down all the compounds into less dangerous compounds. And so really there's really no good reason to be burning household garbage, and there are other alternatives, and that's what we're promoting more and more, is that people turn in their burn barrels and just get rid of them.
Okay, and they would bring, where would they bring their burn barrels?
They can bring them to the Detroit Lakes landfill here, the Household Hazardous Waste site, and they will accept your barrels. If you bring them in, they'll take them from you.
Dan Olson from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So Dan, what are some of the alternatives, if people, I mean, this is something that is kind of a learned behavior.
Right, and we understand that in many families it's been a tradition for many, many years that they've used burn barrels, and in the past it wasn't as much of an issue because the waste was generally just paper and things like that, but modern waste is full of plastics and a lot of other things that are very noxious when they're burned. And so we do understand that there is a family history and a tradition with a lot of families, but it really is something for their own health and the health of their neighbors they should not do any longer. So, the other alternatives are either simply, collect your waste and bring it to the landfill yourself or another waste receptacle, or simply contract with someone to come out and pick up your garbage cans for you.
Right. Dan Olson is here with me from the Pollution Control Agency. Also, I've got Howard Mooney from the DNR standing by on to answer some other burning questions with the spring coming on. Dan, what else can you think of to remind people as we head into spring with burn barrels? What if somebody sees a burn barrel? I mean, do you turn them in, or how do you proceed with that?
Well, we are available if there is an issue where a neighbor feels that that another neighbor is burning garbage and it's noticeable. They can certainly give our office, the Detroit Lakes Pollution Control Office, a call, and we will have someone check into it for them and probably talk with that neighbor, see if they can just resolve it that way. Just simply have a talk with the neighbor and letting them know what the regulations are now.
Okay, so what happens to people with burn barrels that are actually turned in, or maybe somebody driving by sees it and calls the MPCA?
Well, what we would do, we would have someone just go out and investigate that complaint or that call and see if there is a burn barrel, see that if it is being used, and then, like I said, we'd probably have a discussion with that household and just let them know what the regulations are and ask that they probably turn that barrel in. If it does become an issue where enforcement becomes necessary, there is that option. Tickets can be written and that type of thing, but we try to resolve these kind of issues without going to an enforcement step if possible, and a lot of families, once they understand really what the issue is and what the regulations are, usually will just comply.
I'm Carol McCarthy for TV3 here at the transfer station, the household waste facility here at the landfill in Detroit Lakes, Becker County. And we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have Howard Mooney from the DNR talking about some of the burning questions next on TV3. Welcome back to Hometown Happenings. I'm here today with some representatives from area government agencies, state government agencies, talking about burning issues. And Howard Mooney is here from the DNR to talk a little bit more about the DNR, some of the questions, some of the burning questions you deal with now that it doesn't look like it right now, but we're heading into spring, and it's going to be another dry season, it looks like, huh?
It could be. We don't know what's going to happen in the next week. We will have a fire season. We always do. Once the snow disappears, another couple of weeks, things will could be dry if we don't get rain, and that's when we have a lot of fires. And as far as a burning barrel, yeah, we'd like people to kick the can. It's not a good idea. These barrels are notorious for starting wildfires in the springtime, just because. And this, we were mentioning that legally you can still burn leaves and brush in a barrel in the evening hours. Again, you can't do it during the day without a permit, but they're not a good way to burn leaves and brush because they smolder. And the same thing Dan was mentioning about just being a good neighbor. You're not being a good neighbor if that barrel's sitting there smoking and fumes are going and smoke is going into the neighbors. Again, I want to mention too, as far as in towns, they are not legal, period, within the city limits of most of our towns, Detroit Lakes for sure, and all the other towns. They have ordinances because people are in close proximity. If you're burning anything in a barrel, it's going to bother the neighbors.
Right.
Okay.
So, Howard, also some other things that people need to be aware of too is there's usually a time in the spring when everything's melted and we get the winds to drying things out. There's a time where there's permits and talk a little bit about some of that, the permit season.
Okay, yeah, the permit season, once the snow disappears again, do any type of outside open burning, and again, we're talking organic materials, leaves, brush, branches, that type of thing, not household refuse of any kind. You do need a burning permit to do that, and again, we'll issue those from our office, also our township fire wardens, and you can also get those online nowadays. And again, the barrel, again, I said this was an illegal incinerator, it's an illegal burn barrel, because if you're going to burn something in there, if you're going to burn something organic in these barrels, you would need to have a screen on top. And again, they're just notorious because anything you're burning in here, embers are going to fly out on a windy day, and if it's close, if anything coming out of this barrel lands in the grass, it's going to start a fire.
All right. Howard Mooney from the Minnesota DNR here in the Detroit Lakes office, and we wanted to mention one more thing about burn barrels is that there was some advice that Dan had given early in the show. I'm going to have Sandy Gunderson from the transfer station out here, Household Hazardous Waste Facility, kind of give us some of the details on barrels, if people should turn them in.
If you do want to bring them into the Becker County Transfer Station, you can bring them to the transfer station, and then they'll ask. The first question they'll ask you is when's the last time you burned it in? Then they'll charge you by the cubic yard, so depending on how big your barrel is, and then they take care of it for you.
All right.
Yeah, we don't want people using them, so.
Sandy Gunderson from Environmental Services, Howard Mooney from the Minnesota DNR, and Dan Olson from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, my guest today on Hometown Happenings. And I want to thank you. Howard, if people have any questions, how would they get a hold of you?
Okay, at our DNR office, the number is 846-8363. And again, if they have problems during the springtime, again, they can call the Becker County Sheriff too, and the deputy can stop by if someone's continually burning. And like Dan said, normally if we get involved with them when they're starting fires, if we see somebody burning in a barrel too, we can stop by and talk to them. If they continue to do it, they can be fined. There is a fine for an illegal burn barrel. There is a fine, and again, if it starts a fire, there can be a fine, or you're going to have charges from either from us or from a fire department that has to come out and put out that fire that started from the burn barrel.
Howard Mooney, thank you so much. And for TV3, I'm Carol McCarthy.